go for a more informal approach. You know. The fact that I'm 5 foot doesn't really help with these kind of things. I hope you can all see me over the top.
I come on the steps. Should I take a step?
So, thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon. For those of you who aren't already aware of my work, I am a freelance journalist, previously at The Guardian and still write for them very regularly. When I was at The Guardian, I was the editor of a particular section of its website which focuses on local government and the issues around engaging with communities, democratic participation, and funding cuts and so on. So that platform particularly looked at new ways to give people working for both metropolitan councils and so on, and right down to the parish level, a way to share what's going on there. So I know a lot about some of the issues that you're all facing in terms of communication, and I want to suggest some ways that you might be able to tackle them. I'm very happy to take questions afterwards, and I'm sure some of you might disagree with what I have to say, so feel free to be as critical as you like. I want to talk about social media and digital journalism, and I know social media can raise some eyebrows, but I'm going to try and convince you that it's a really important part of the way all of the media, from local papers right up to national newspapers that I work for, operate. It's a great chance for you to start to talk to those individuals who can tell your stories. In terms of reach, historically, councils like yours would really be working with local papers. You get to know your local government specialist on the local paper very intimately. You'd be inviting them to meetings. You would presumably probably be inviting them down to the pub for a drink as well. They would understand what you were dealing with. You would understand the way they operated and their deadlines and the types of issues they wanted to hear about from you. But that situation has changed. Local papers, I'm sure you've all experienced, are facing a real crisis in terms of their future. They are deeply under-resourced. They are having huge problems in terms of attracting the advertising they need. They don't have specialist journalists often anymore because they can't afford them. And they tend to share journalists with a number of other local newspapers, so that their staff simply don't have the time to get to know you all on a one-to-one basis in the way they would have done in the past. I think that's deeply sad. I'm sure a lot of you do as well, but it is the situation that we're in, so I'm going to talk about ways to get around it. What we have now is an ecosystem, if you will, that perhaps local papers play a much smaller part, but is nevertheless much bigger. So you have a lot of local bloggers who are dealing with some of the issues that journalists would have previously dealt with, who are not being paid for their efforts, but are extremely dedicated and often want to know what's going on and want to get to know you. You've got social media communities, in which I'm going to say a little bit more about. You've got the national newspapers who, because of social media, are surveying what's going on at a very local level for the first time. And they're able to do that without it costing a huge amount of their money or time to do so. And you've also got local campaigners who are organising themselves digitally, who can tap into the work that you're doing. So I want to propose a different way of thinking about social media. If you see on the news something about a Twitter story and you roll your eyes, which I understand when you have things like the Ice Bucket Challenge and so on. I'm actually speaking at an event about charity social media this evening, and those kind of stories can cause a certain amount of scepticism. So I want you to think about it in a different way. Social media is basically a way of gathering people around a community of interest. You think of it on Facebook perhaps as a friendship group, that's an existing community of interest that talks to each other online. It might be a political party or political affiliation, or it might be a local or national cause, whether charitable or a campaign to save a park or something. But basically, hashtags, Facebook groups, all of these things are essentially exactly the same as a parish council meeting in a hall. It is basically just a way that people meet and talk. And because of that, it allows you to share the conversations you're having, but with a wide group of people. You're basically inviting the world into your hall by using these means. It's nothing more frightening than that. it's an exciting way of getting people to understand all the work that you're putting in. The other important point is that because journalism, both local and national, has faced a bit of a crisis in how it continues to operate its business model, how we fund ourselves, digital communications do control the news agenda now. So it's a unique opportunity for you to become part of the national news agenda if you've got a really important local issue. Digital means break down some of the barriers to participation in conversation and debate that you may previously had when you were just trying to attract people into your hall, whether that's full-time employment, caring for relatives, older people becoming frail, unable to participate by physically going down to the hall. All these people can now become part of that conversation, and they can also become part of a conversation with mainstream journalists. So I want you to get involved with social media and find out what people are saying about your area and contribute to that conversation. I think that's a great way to think about what social media is. I just want to say one more thing. I know we've got 3 people to fit in today about how journalism is responding to social media. It's becoming a core source of stories, and journalists have collected some of the tools on social media. They write blogs now. Mainstream newspapers have blogs. They don't just have comment sections anymore. Journalists think about positioning themselves in terms of hosting the debate rather than controlling it. It's basically brought us all down from our ivory towers, which I think is probably a very bad thing. And it provides now journalism a platform rather than a definitive version of what's going on in the world. And that's a great opportunity. I mean, just 3 examples of these are the Guardian networks that I talked about earlier. The Comment is free platform on the Guardian website. The Independent has a site called Indie Voices, which is, again, a chance for anybody to share their view if it's well written, and you can have it posted there. So this is your chance to have your say in your own words. So we're going to do some round-table work later, and there'll be a Q&A session. But I just wanted to explain to you how journalism is changing, and I think this is a great chance for you to stop worrying about the death of your local paper and think about how you can find yourselves in the national